Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Are you one of those students who are suffering with your dissertation? Do you want to know how to go about defending it? Then worry no more. You have come to the right place. In this video, I will talk in detail about how to go about defending your dissertation at the Viva-Voce level, be it at the graduation level, post-graduation level, MPhil or PhD. In this context, I must mention that I have already defended my MPhil dissertation at the University of Delhi Department of English last year, November in 2021. In this video, this is all that we will discuss. Let's begin. Firstly, we must understand a simple thing. To defend your dissertation, you have to write your dissertation really well. If you have written your dissertation already very well, then 60 to 65% of your work is already done. After that, what you have to do is, you have to read and reread your dissertation from the front to the back, from the back to the front, at least 2 times each. Why am I saying this? You yourself have written the dissertation. Why do you have to read it so many times? There are 3 main reasons. First, a dissertation, especially if it's a master's or an MPhil or a PhD dissertation, takes a really long time to write. 6 months, 8 months, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, sometimes 5. Therefore, it's not possible for us human beings to remember what we had written right at the onset of the thesis. And more importantly, if you do this, then you get the opportunity to revise your work accordingly. Writing is the most important part, but editing is also an equally important part of your thesis. Therefore, write your thesis really well, and after you have written your thesis, when you are ready to submit and you are preparing yourself for the dissertation, my advice to you would be, please read your dissertation thoroughly at least 4 times, twice from the front and twice from the back. By back, I don't mean reading it in a reverse order, like I don't mean to say that you should read words right from the left. No, I mean read the last chapter first, then the second last chapter, then the third last chapter. In this way, reach to the first chapter. This way, your arguments will be clearer to you, and when you are asked a conceptual or a theoretical question in the Viva-Voce, you will be at a better position to answer these questions. The second step which you must do in this context is you should have a thorough knowledge of your primary texts at least, and the texts you have listed in your literature review. Of course, it is not possible to know everything about the 70, 80, 100, 120 texts that you mention in your bibliography, and I don't think anyone expects that of you either. Therefore, know your primary texts, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever be the number of primary texts you have, and the 10 to 15 texts that you have listed in your literature review. These texts must be read by you very thoroughly, because they will ask you questions pertaining to your primary texts and your literature review. And in this context, may I mention that you must know what methodology you are following, and you must write that down exactly in your dissertation, because it often happens that we are doing a close textual analysis, and in that process we tend to implement a little bit of structuralism without even understanding it. So please have your supervisor advise you in this context. Ask them to tell you if your methodology, the one that you have written down in your thesis, is wrong, and in that case, please rectify your methodology accordingly, because the 3 most important things in your dissertation are your primary texts, your methodology, and your conclusion. I will talk about the conclusion part a little later. Many people have often asked me what are the questions which I was asked when I gave my MPhil interview, and I will share them with you now. The first question, if I remember correctly, though that was almost 7.5 months ago, but I still fairly recall it. The first question was, why am I working on Satyajit Ray's translation? Those of you who already follow me know that my MPhil dissertation was on the translations of Feluda from Bangla to English. To that question, I gave an answer that Satyajit Ray's translations offer a unique opportunity to read 2 languages which are not connected in any linguistic way, but are connected historically in every possible way. Therefore, it would open up an avenue of understanding translation studies in the modern day and age, where globalization has reached an all-time high. owing to the pandemic. Following that, I was also asked what my methodology is. My methodology was structuralism, and I had explained why I had taken Gilles Deleuze's essay, How Do We Recognize Structuralism, especially Criterion 5 and Criterion 7 in my dissertation. That's a pretty long answer and I will not go into that in detail here. After that, the external examiner who was present in the interview asked me if I knew about the other works of Satyajit Ray which were meant for children and young adults. Of course, those of you who know me know that I'm an ardent follower of Satyajit Ray, and it would not be an overstatement to say that I have read everything that the man has penned down in his entire career. So I obviously answered in the affirmative, and then they asked me a few questions about the translations of those texts which Satyajit Ray has written in Bangla and how their translations could be worked on in the future. This is a very important area because it not only situates and contextualizes your dissertation but also opens up the possibility of someone working with your dissertation as one of their critical texts, and also offers you an opportunity to develop this further into a PhD if this is your MPhil dissertation. After that, they asked many more questions, including what conclusions I had reached. Now this is the part where I will talk about your conclusions. In your dissertation hypothesis, you will pose a few questions. It is not important to reach absolutely final conclusions to those questions. You might just reach an arguable conclusion or a tentative conclusion. That is also absolutely fine. But in my case, in my dissertation, I managed to land some pretty conclusive evidence with thorough textual support, which is why my conclusions were more or less conclusive, if I may put it that way. Therefore, your conclusions need not be absolute or overarching. They might be tentative or conjectural, but even in that case, those tentative conclusions or conjectures must have some basis which you have built in your dissertation. You must remember your conclusion at all costs. I remember in my 2 interviews for the posts of assistant professor at CDOE RBU and at CSC, in both of these cases I was asked about my MPhil thesis and what conclusions I had reached after completing the thesis. So even after your dissertation, you must remember your conclusions at all costs because it will come to your aid in the days to come. So that is all about my MPhil interview experience, though it went on for almost 20 to 25 minutes. Of course, it's not possible to reiterate the entire process here on YouTube, but I believe you got a certain idea. And now I will give you one final tip about your dissertation's defense preparation. Find at least 3 people who would read your thesis and then ask them to point out the flaws in them. Once they have read the thesis and found out flaws with them, please sit down and correct them and then only submit your dissertation. Because if there is a fundamental or a conceptual or a theoretical flaw in your thesis, there is a high chance that the examiners will jump on you at exactly that point and tend to make you a little uncomfortable in the interview. Of course, while we are appearing for interviews, all of us are a little or a lot jittery, and the interviewers are aware of it. Therefore, sometimes they take advantage of this and make you feel even more nervous and uncomfortable. Therefore, please find out people who would read your thesis, make them correct your thesis if there are any errors, and most importantly, after they have done this, please sit down with these people and ask them to take a demo interview for you, a demo Viva-Voce. Of course, they will not be as well learned or they won't be the experts in the field where you have completed your dissertation. It is best if you can get your supervisor to do this, but in most cases your supervisor is way too busy to be doing these things for you. So please find people who are at least your peers or seniors to you, or people whom you have studied under. Please go ahead and ask them to read your thesis. Please ask them to ask you questions on an impromptu basis. That will help you because you won't be getting time to prepare for those questions, which will be the same for your dissertation defense. If you follow these steps, I believe your dissertation defense will be a lot easier. I know defenses appear only mainly at the MPhil and the PhD level, but Even if your dissertation doesn't require a defense, I believe you should follow these steps, because you can publish your dissertation as a book chapter, as a monograph if your dissertation is big enough at the MPhil or the PhD level, or as journal articles, which will increase your publication and your API score in general. So I hope this video was helpful to you. If yes, please like, share and subscribe. If you have any questions, queries, doubts or comments, please don't forget to leave them down below. And I will see you in the next video. Till then, hasta la vista.